the man, the myth, the legend, the act man, talking about why are AAA games getting worse. We could probably already have a good idea of why AAA games are getting worse, but I want to see what the act man says about it, because like, yeah, it's a bit obvious AAA games are getting worse, and they generally always do. Indie is generally better for a lot of things, right? What are AAA games? AAA games would be stuff that's made by like the big producing companies, right? That have big budget stuff. So any games made by like EA, Ubisoft, Nintendo, Sony themselves, you know, like these big budget games that have like, you know, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions spent on them, right? It's not done by a small little team. So you have either AAA, so you have AAA projects like the big boys, you know? So like your Call of Duties, your Grand Theft Autos, your Halos, you know, that sort of stuff, your Marios, your Pokemons. That's what your AAAs are, right?
Wow, this new Star Wars Outlaws game looks pretty great.
That's pretty good.
You know
Yeah,
what?
that
Let's check out
Outlaws
the
game is
official website and see if we
questionable.
can learn more about the good lord, what is happening in there?
Season pass?
3 days early.
Wait, is there a season pass for a single player game? How does that work? Oh wait, I get the point. Yeah.
Pre-order. You want to pre-order the season's pass and get 3 days early access? Pre-order. That's four.
Oh, bro, I hate the 3-day early access crap nowadays, because most of the time the game doesn't even work for like the first 3 days. You pay extra to get 3 days earlier, and then the game doesn't fucking work for those 3 days. It's goddamn awful.
Pre-orders on one
Yeah.
stream. Extend K's journey with 2 upcoming DLCs. You want to play the exclusive Jabba's Fuckhouse? Pre-order. Unlock exclusive cosmetic. Pre-order. Are you fucking pre-ordering yet? You know what's funny? If you go to the Arrowhead Games website and just look at it, there's something special about an Arrowhead game. Games should challenge the creativity of the individuals who play them. We want our games to help forge friendships.
Yeah, this hasn't aged well, right? Because he's using Helldivers as an example. This video is like, I think like 4 days old. And it, it was yesterday that Helldivers this just got like review bombed because of them having to make people use PlayStation Network to play the game. And people are not happy about that. So this is actually not aged very well with him using Helldivers as an example of a great company, because people actually hate them at the moment. I don't generally see the massive issue with Helldivers currently, except for them selling in regions that technically can't use PSN. But outside of that, they did say on Steam that you were going to have to use it. So I'm sort of on the fence, really, about the scenario. But some people absolutely hate them because of it.
And look at that. Not even an advertisement for the Super Citizen Edition.
Bro, this is so funny that he's using this as an example.
To illustrate what AAA gaming has become and what indie gaming has evolved into.
No.
The difference in priorities.
Also, I wouldn't call Helldivers indie because they're funded by Sony. Yes, they're not a AAA company, but they're definitely like A or AA. Like, they definitely had a lot of funding in them, and, you know, they've got Sony's bags, so they're definitely not an indie. That's for sure. Not in the correct term, anyway.
Fact, man, that's just typical Ubisoft greed and shenanigans.
Yeah, it is very
But
Ubisoft.
you're wrong. It's worse than that. What Ubisoft is doing with Star Wars Outlaws is symptomatic of a much greater issue plaguing all of AAA gaming. Recently, Ubisoft dropped a story trailer for Outlaws. I watched it, and I felt apathy. As you know,
yeah, I watched it and I was like, I wasn't that fussed about it.
Looked solid, but now I'm skeptical. Maybe it was the boring writing, the generic presentation, or the fact
I don't think
that
I'm gonna
they're
get Outlaws
directing people
until
towards the
people have said what it's like.
version of the game instead of the standard version.
Hello, I like money.
100
Still, I don't
so
remember the
expensive,
last
bro, for
time
those
I
special
felt
editions.
Indifferent to a new Star Wars game. On the flip side, one of my buddies sent me a trailer for a game called Kingmakers. I've never heard of this.
No, I haven't heard of that
franchise or
either.
the studio behind it, but let's check it out.
Oh my god! Wait!
Oh my God, this is a fucking Chevy.
Wait! Well, I've never heard of this game before, but is this literally using real life tech against medieval armies? Bro, that sounds awesome! It's just a guy running his car.
You with shotguns? How can the engine handle this many guys on screen?
What is this?
Blade plus Dynasty Warriors with time travel?
They throw grenades.
Oh my god, and they have RTS mechanics? No shot, no shot. It can't get any crazier.
What is this, bro?
Here's the question of the day. Why?
What is that insane game? And why has it not been done before? That sounds awesome. Imagine you got like you just see a load of people with spears and you just got an Apache helicopter like fucking shooting them down and like fucking trying to throw spears at you, bro. What was that called? Kingsman? Was it Kingsman? No. What was that game called? What did he call it? What was that game called, bro? No, a bit further.
Heard of this franchise nor the studio behind it, but let's check it out.
Wait, oh no, you just said it.
Flip side, one of my buddies sent
Here we go, here we go.
for a game
What's it called?
Kingmakers.
Kingmakers. Kingmakers. Has it came out yet? Oh, it hasn't got a release date yet. It's on Steam though. I'm gonna bookmark that shit. That looks so funny.
Oh my god, and they have RTS mechanics? No shot.
It's just planned release for this year. Okay, I did that as my bookmark, bro.
Here's the question
That
of
looks
the day.
sick.
Why, as a huge Star Wars fan, am I more excited for this and not this? Well, the answer is
Let's
obvious.
go.
It's Ubisoft. But
Yeah,
like I said,
it's
AAA
Ubisoft,
gaming
bro.
has been in decline for some time. Meanwhile, indie games have become a spawning pool for creativity and imagination.
Yeah, I wouldn't call
Now
Helldivers
we've
2
seen
an
the
indie game.
plethora of AAA
Hit you
games
pushing it a bit too much.
videos spring up on YouTube. Well, AAA gaming didn't just die, it was murdered.
Yes.
If you got that reference, welcome back to 2017 YouTube. Clearly, I'm not the only one who has felt disillusioned and apathetic towards recent AAA titles.
Like, not all AAA titles are bad though. Like Elden Ring's like a shining example, right? I think it's just that the companies that pump out a game every single year are the ones that are the worst critics for this, right? That, you know, like release your football game, just your general sports games or yearly shooter titles. And it's a new one every year, just rinse and repeat, right? I think they're the worst offenders normally.
On how AAA
Or
games have
Ubisoft.
gotten worse. They highlight the obvious: excessive monetization, unfinished products being released. I can't masturbate to this character. And while these are all issues worth
Ackman, my man. Where did that come from?
pointing out, we need to understand why these things are happening. The bigger picture. You see, the reality is AAA games have become far too safe, formulaic, predictable.
But and
and
76 apparently is obviously meant to be good now.
Perhaps it's because
Maybe.
you're an old, jaded nerd, Act Man. No, that couldn't possibly be it.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
That's
The
what we're
children
gonna
who are
explore
wrong.
today. The decline of AAA gaming and the rise of indie.
Why has AAA gaming gotten so bad?
Now, first off, what the fuck does AAA actually mean?
Oh my god, he's gonna explain AAA after I've done it already to one of you guys asking the same question when I said the title. Here we go. Hey, it's Ackman's description now, I guess.
No, instead you should join my public Discord server, the Act Clan. Links in the pinned comment and in the little card up here.
Right,
the
what's this?
acronym originally referred to large budget, high profile games developed by reputable studios released by major publishers. You know, Halo, Call of Duty, Warcraft, The Witcher, 50 Cent Bulletproof, Corey in the House.
Corey in the
Games
House.
that would shake the very foundation of the world. AAA games typically have large teams, expensive marketing campaigns, and copious amounts of funding. The term was taken from the credit industry and applied to gaming once the severely obese corporate fat cats realized video games weren't a joke of a business and could actually make more money than Hollywood.
76 kind of map
For business
expansion now.
moguls,
No.
AAA meant this is the safest investment you can make to get a return. That's not the case anymore. Today, AAA mostly indicates the aspirations and cost of a game, not how safe an investment it is. From the 80s to the 2000s, there weren't many games that were commercial failures. It was mostly like failed consoles. That's a good video to watch. But since the 2010s, as AAA gaming budgets have grown exponentially, we've seen some big-ass
Yeah, there's some games that have cost extremely loads of money to the point of like, it's amazing like they break even, bro. Like, you're talking like literally like $500 million some of the games nowadays are costing. Like they said, like Red Dead Redemption was like fucking 280 million or something like that. Stupid amounts of money, bro, to make a game.
flops. Marvel's Avengers, Suicide Squad, Anthem, Redfall, Aliens, Colonial Marines. And in the last 7 or so years, it also seems like many popular franchises have released what fans consider to be the worst entry in said franchise. Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, Mass Effect Andromeda.
See, 2 out of 3 of those though have been improved massively. Like I know Battlefield is massively better now than what it was on release. Like a lot better. No, I haven't played 76 Fallout, so I don't know about that. But supposedly, like you guys has told me that it's a lot better now as well. And then, yeah, let's just forget about Mass Effect.
Maybe this is all just a coincidence.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true coincidences are rare.
So what gives? Why have things changed? Well, one of the driving factors behind the decline of AAA games is they've gotten too big. The pants do not fit anymore. For reference, vanilla World of Warcraft was made by a team of about 40 people. Helldivers 2 was made by a team of 100. Over 9,000 people contributed to Diablo 4.
What, 9,000?
Starfield, 7 years in development.
Oh God, here we go.
Budget, 1,700 planets to explore. Todd, you think?
I think he is on a point though that the companies are a lot more bloated now, but at the same time, like indie companies aren't going to have certain areas where they don't have people. Like, for example, an indie game will release being like very much broken, and then basically the players who play the game will be like their QA division, right? And QA is something that indie companies just don't have, and they make up normally like several hundred people in themselves, right? To make sure that these games that come out that are bug free or like there's no major issues with them. But I would say that there is a level of bloat for sure. Like they'll have like way more like people than they really need for a project. But also, but that partially comes down to because they want to rush these projects out, right? I don't know if Atman's going to be onto this, but like I wouldn't say so much the projects got too big for themselves. I think it's that they're trying to make the project, well, in a sense they have got too big, right? Because they're trying to push. They just try and hire more people to try and make it so they can do the games in a certain time constraint, right? But realistically, it works better to have a smaller amount of people, but with a longer time span. But the investors don't want that. And that's what comes down to being a lot of problems with the AAA games, I find, is that it's to do with the investors. It's not the companies themselves or the devs themselves. It's the people at the very, very tippy top that have all the money and all the say, basically, that cause all the issues. Which is why indie doesn't have those issues.
I think maybe we could tone that number of planets down to like 30 or maybe 10? 10 really good planets?
The gamers desire 1,700 planets.
AAA games have exploded in size, scope, and cost to an unprecedented level. On one hand,
so exactly how waterproof is the bear?
How waterproof is the bear skin, bro? I don't know, man. What do you think?
your team has the potential to create something truly incredible, revolutionary, to realize their greatest ambitions. But this relies on having a cohesive vision amongst many people.
Yeah, that's why I think smaller amount of people, like I said earlier, smaller amount of people over a longer period of time is much easier because you can have more of a better idea of what's going on with everything in the project. Where if you got a project with, several hundred people on it, certain areas you just have no knowledge about what's going on there and just, just let them handle their own thing. And that can have conflicting issues later on.
Budget and resources to make it happen. However, the more ambitious a project, the more money invested into it, the riskier it becomes. Immortals of Avium, a game you probably never heard of, was the debut title for Ascendant Studios. And for some
it didn't do great.
Inexplicable reason, the game was given a budget of 125 million smackaroos, making it one of the most expensive video games ever made. What the fuck? Immortals sold poorly, and Ascendant, after releasing...
I genuinely think Immortals of Avium's biggest problem, though, was because it wasn't fucking advertised. The game also did have a lot of issues on launch, which does not help its case. But I think the main reason it didn't sell very well is, you didn't see it advertised anywhere. You just saw people talking about a game that came out, which had a great concept, fighting, like an FPS game, but using magic, right? And it's first person. The concept and the ideas for it are great. The execution just wasn't that great. And also, it wasn't advertised anywhere, so not many people heard
Their
about it
first
until
title
after it came out.
had to lay off almost half of their staff. 6 months
Yeah.
later, the remaining employees were furloughed, a fancy word for maybe you have a job, IDK, and the company's future is uncertain. Sometimes memes can spit truth. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. Immortals of Aveum is a mistake that shouldn't have happened, and it's the exact type of reason why AAA publishers are sticking with familiar IPs and playing it safe. You guys excited for Call of Duty 26 to come out later this year? The bigger
novelty
they are,
list.
the harder they fall. But why was Immortals, this random game, bloated with such a ridiculous budget and high expectations?
That is
Well,
interesting to know.
COVID-19 changed a lot of things. People bought a shitload of video games during that time.
Yes.
And some upper management folk adjusted their business. They saw this as an opportunity to invest.
And this problem has caused lots of layoffs in the recent year and a half as well in the industry, because now people have gone back to work. Who would have thought people have less time to play video games, so there's less video games sold. And all the investors are like, oh shit, what the fuck? We're not making as much money. Cut them, cut them, cut the people!
Invest. So they
Yeah.
expanded
Yikers.
operations, hired more employees, but of course, the video game sales caused by the pandemic didn't last. And we're now
Nope.
seeing the fallout of that overexpansion.
Yep.
Fallout New Vegas. 10,000 layoffs in 2023 and 8,000 more on the way.
Oh yeah, there's been
30
loads
studios
already this
shut
year.
down, several games canceled. The hubris from corporate overlords has uprooted this industry in such terrible ways. Overloading teams with talented employees and a shit zillion dollars isn't some magical recipe for success.
Nope,
In
you
fact, it
time.
puts the studio in a much more dire, stressful position, because if the game doesn't sell well, they're fucked. Blockbuster game development costs are out of control. According to a study by the CMA, a single AAA game could have development costs between $90 to $180 million, plus $50 to $150 million for marketing.
Yeah, marketing's
Suicide
a big
Squad
cut,
game
bro.
that 200 people are playing?
Yeah,
Probably
Suicide
had an
Squad,
inflated budget.
I think Suicide Squad spent tons and tons of money on marketing. It was marketed everywhere, and then it just flopped to shit.
This is clearly unsustainable. It's like every major AAA game is some massive live or die gamble. Naturally, companies want to mitigate and avoid all the risk they can. So, again, they rely on established IPs and stick with what's familiar, and most of all, safe. So wait a minute, Ackman. You're telling me AAA games have become a greater risk, but also safer?
That's a paradox, John.
Well, it's safer. So the premise of how it's going, isn't it, right? Is the AAA games will do a concept that they know is safe for them to make some money from because the public like them, but it's not adventuring into an area that's particularly risky unless you're, like Avium. But and then the indie games are the ones that try new things, and then it's they try new things with smaller budgets. Something becomes successful and really good and really popular, then the AAA games will make a basically upscaled, higher budget version of that. Rinse and repeat, basically, right?
Think about it this way. The bigger the budget, the more employees working on a game, the more copies it needs to sell. Therefore, it has to appeal to a lower common denominator. They have to simplify and dumb down something. They cannot take risks or experiment. They have to stick with what has proven to work. This is a huge reason why indie games such as Helldivers 2, Hades, Lethal Company
Hades
are
is
so
a
much
great
better at
game.
innovating on a popular formula or giving us something
Oh,
brand new.
and Lethal Company, of course.
Would you rather play Back 4 Blood or Deep Rock Galactic? I better see some fucking rock
Deep
and
Rock
stone in the
Galactic.
comments.
I've never seen
But
that
that's the
before.
thing. Back 4
Are they
Blood
dwarfs?
is a cheap imitation of what inspired it, while Deep Rock Galactic is a unique twist on the whole four dumbasses trying to accomplish something co-op game. Deep Rock is brimming with charm, style, and this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck, but you can feel
Wait,
the love
what did he say
that
about
went
Back 4
in the
Blood?
comments. But that's the thing. Back 4 Blood is a cheap imitation of what inspired it.
I don't know can you call it a cheap imitation of what inspired it though? Because Back 4 Blood is literally made by the people, and he's obviously saying it's inspired by Left 4 Dead, but the guys who made Back 4 Blood are the guys who made Left 4 Dead. So can you really cheap imitate your own work? So I don't think you can. Obviously, it wasn't a great game, but like, I don't know if you can call it a cheap not intimidation, imitation, because technically it's the same guys who made the original one, just not with that spark that had the first, two. Like, I don't think that quite logically makes sense. I sort of get what he's trying to make as a point, but I don't think they're the right words to really use in this scenario because it's not really you can't make a copy of something that you've already made. You can't, if you've created something, you can't copy it because it's your own work anyways. It's not really copying, is it? Right?
While Deep Rock Galactic is a unique twist on the whole four.
Yeah, no, unique twists. You definitely should do it.
Deep Rock is
for sure
with charm, style, and this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck, but you can feel the love.
Maybe that's probably why Back 4 Blood didn't do well, because people want new things, right?
Well,
because you just play Left 4 Dead instead of Back 4 Blood, right?
For 1 millisecond that the Modern Warfare 3 remake was going to do the no Russian scene justice? Did you think it was going to be as shocking, if not more so?
No!
You terrorist.
No Russians, bro.
You look like one.
What? I've not actually played the
Riders
campaign of that.
Of course not. Like, even Call of Duty feels like it's been sterilized. But of course, there's some exceptions with, like, Cold War. I mean, that game took some serious risks.
Not played that one either.
Story, and it paid off. Gamers love being surprised. We love being thrown for a loop. Because it's so hard to do now in the age of the internet.
Yeah.
And with all these leaks and everything.
I think the bigger problem here is, honestly, most games that he's referred to a lot of the time, like a lot of these games, like he's saying about having a good story, something for you to interact with, but most games don't care about a campaign mode with a story anymore, right? Because it's all about the online features and stuff like that, and it's a lot harder to push an agenda of a story with online only. So like, it's a different time, right? People care more about online and don't give a shit about the campaign. Like, you can probably see like easily over half the people who played the new Call of Duty have probably not even touched the campaign. It's probably more than that. I'm probably being really generous by saying only half haven't. But like, it's because multiplayer is where all the stuff's at, and people like playing with their friends more so, right? So like campaigns and solo player stuff is definitely more of a niche now. So that's why it's going to be harder to find, a good single player.
Because there haven't been any roadmaps going into excruciating detail about what to expect. It's why the redemption of No Man's Sky hit so hard, because Sean and Hello Games just went into hibernation and came out when they had something to show people. When I say safe, I'm not just talking about the lack of innovation with game design, but also the writing. AAA franchises that used to go really
we need more innovation for sure.
Like they're pulling punches. I'm not a huge expert on Fallout, so Fallout fans, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there is a massive difference between Bethesda's Fallout games and the other Fallout games. In New Vegas, you can literally sell drugs to children. Like that's a real choice you have in the game. You can be an absolute maniac. You can shake down a guy for caps and he'll say, well, you've taken everything but the clothes off my back. And then you can say, actually,
give me your clothes.
You know what I mean? Like, for some reason, I just can't picture these types of things being in a new Fallout game. KOTOR 2 is also a fantastic example.
Oh, I love KOTOR so much,
ever
bro.
See a Star Wars game that takes the franchise in such a bold direction. KOTOR 2 is a Star Wars game where the main villain wants to kill the Force, destroy the Force. Like,
see, there's an obvious reason though. It all comes down to the thing I said earlier, right? Though the reason why you'll never see stuff like this in games anymore is because everyone is all the decisions of these AAA games are pampered and done to fit the ideals and wants of the investors of the big AAA companies, right? The people who are in the board of directors, right? Where all they care about is making money. They don't give a shit about the project. It's all about making money, right? And this isn't like this is new information, right? That's how board of directors in pretty much every company act, right? And it's no different in the games company. So they want to pander to the current ideals of the world. They want to have the game be, you know, woke and shit like that, right? That's why you get all these like really woke agenda sort of games, and it's like pandering to the current like political scenarios in the world and whatnot, right? For majority of AAA games, and that's why they're a lot more censored and stuff like that. Because the world's more censored than it used to be back when those other games like KOTOR were made, and that's why, you know, you don't see indie games because they don't have the problem with the board of directors for most indie game companies. They just make a good game. And that's literally what all of these problems with AAA companies comes down to, is they have a board of investors who pretty much make all the calls, and that's it. That's literally the issue. Like, that's what it all comes down to. If they weren't there, there probably wouldn't be a problem. But then there wouldn't be massive titles, you know, like you have, because there wouldn't be the funding. It's one of those things where it was inevitably going to happen eventually.
Remove it from the universe. Destroy the concept of Sith and Jedi completely.
Which is a shame.
There's no way in Nar Shaddaa we'd ever witness a Star Wars game that delves
I do
into that
agree, we
sort
probably
of
won't.
thing. According to Obsidian,
Oh.
on one of the main writers for New Vegas and KOTOR 2, Obsidian made multiple proposals to develop spin-offs for Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, all of which were turned down by Bethesda.
Oh,
and while we can only imagine the reason why, perhaps it was too risky in their eyes. Here's another example: Halo Wars 2. Console RTS, pretty niche, but its expansion, Awakening the Nightmare, was the first time in a decade we saw the Flood in a Halo game. Why haven't the Flood in the main
I didn't think about that.
Don't want to risk lowering the sales with an M rating, right? M rating games don't sell too great, do they?
GTA's like the outlier.
Pisses me off sometimes. LA Noire 2, where is it? Bully 2. And you might think, well, isn't that hypocritical, Ackman? You were just complaining about these companies sticking to established IPs. But both of these franchises only have one game. And that's kind of my point. Instead of making one, you know, $400 million game, why not cut a chunk of that out and develop multiple AA games?
What if they took one of these $150 million AAA budgets and made a couple of $20 million bets with them, right? And just
because the investors don't want that.
The risk is
they want set in stone money.
I think that would be very good for the industry.
It would be great for the industry.
Take more risks like that with smaller teams.
But they don't give a shit about the industry. They just give a shit about making money at the top.
Vision, I think, and stronger creativity out of it.
I at least understand this for Rockstar because their games
it's just wishful thinking, right? That the investors are gonna ever change. They're not. It's the unfortunate fact, right?
Are so overhyped. If they released a sequel that you thought was a 9 out of 10, that would feel disappointing. A bunch of Halo spin-offs were also pitched.
That's why we're never gonna get Half-Life 3.
An ODST-themed game similar to Helldivers 2. Imagine what could have been. I guess I just don't understand why the corporate side of game development treats every title like it has to be an all-in bet. Do you see what I'm getting at? So many of our favorite franchises that we grew to love because of how bold they were are now playing it safe. And that's why indie and AA gaming is thriving right now, because they can take risks. They're not obsessing over how many people are going to buy the game. The developers of Palworld were like, well, hope this doesn't make us go bankrupt. Indie studios are operating at the level that AAA used to. And when you don't have to make hundreds of millions,
because they don't have the investors telling them what to do, bro,
and not fire your entire studio, you can take risks. And going back to my initial comparison between Arrowhead and Ubisoft, there's a huge difference in the mission statements of AAA and indie games. Baldur's Gate 3 is an indie game.
I guess he is referring, because he did say make loads of AA games. So I'm guessing if it's not AAA, he's referring to it as an indie game, which isn't quite actually the technical definitions, right? But I guess people could use indie game differently, right? There's not a set 100% wording for it, but the reason why we have A games, AA games, and AAA games is because it standardizes normally depending on their budget, right? So like something like Lethal Company, who's made by one person, definitely an indie game. I'd say if it's less than 40 people in the team, it's probably an indie game. But as soon as you get anywhere close to 100 people, it's definitely not an indie game at that point anymore. It's just a smaller company game.
Studio, but the quality is so amazing, you'd assume it's AAA, right? There's this trend of indie developers reassuring customers that they're not going to nickel and dime us. No, there are no in-game.
But they don't have
purchases
to,
in
'cause they don't
Arcane.
have
We
to
believe in
appease anybody,
providing a
right?
Complete and immersive gaming experience without the need for additional purchases. Vermintide 2 is one of the only games to do loot boxes right because they didn't sell them. At the height of the loot box craze, no less. Helldivers 2 doesn't let you pay for tiers in the freedom passes. Indie developers can afford to be more player friendly because they don't have these investors hanging
I do
over
like the
their
battle pass
heads
system that
with
Helldivers
massive
has done. I
budgets.
don't really play
We think
Helldivers
all these
myself,
egregious
but
microtransactions is just
they
pure
did it.
corporate
They did
greed,
it in a
and there's
good way,
chance
honestly.
some of it is, but it's also a safeguard, like a necessity. And I think the solution is just to make games smaller, dude. Now, a really shitty byproduct of this risk-averse mentality is that a lot of these publishers are looking for a quick buck. They want to make
that's all
easy
it's about,
bucks.
bro.
What do? Bingo! Flood the market with shitty remasters. Boy, there's been an abundance of these lately.
Yeah, I tried
The Last of
Helldivers
Us
too,
1 on PC,
but I was
GTA
mainly
trilogy.
solo, so yeah, I understand that for sure. Or Rip
Hell,
Python
even
error.
Dark Souls Remastered sucked major ass. And don't even get me started on the fucking Battlefront collection. Did you know that at one point Warcraft...
Bro, that Battlefront collection was such a disappointment. I can't believe it, bro. They had one job and they fucked it massively. I don't know how they messed it up so bad. They just had to do the simple thing of copy pasta and make it more HD. How did they ruin it? That game collection could have been so good, bro. Oh, it pains me now.
3 Reforged had like 3 people working on it. Like one guy was supposed to remake all of the cutscenes. And this is so perplexing. These studios dump 10 figures into a new game, but can't even hire 10 people to make a decent remaster. It's like there's no middle ground.
I think the biggest issue with doing the remasters is normally it's not made by the company who made the original game, which means it doesn't have the proper love and attention put into it, right? Normally it's sent off to a company which is normally like somewhere, somewhere in the Asian region where they can get it done really cheaply, and they do it for a quick buck. Like remasters, remakes are generally just done to gain a quick buck from the companies, which is a shame because a really good remaster could be just so good for certain games, right? But most of the time they're made as for a quick buck, which is the sad thing, and that's why most of them come out pretty fucking goddamn awful because they're not even made by the original internal company, right? They're sent off to somewhere else. Normally you find it is in sort of the Asian region because it's a lot cheaper to make games over there, or in the or Western Europe is quite popular as well. No, Eastern Europe is what I mean, not Western Europe, Eastern Europe. But yeah, like, and that's why it comes out normally pretty bad because these people are normally not as good in those like in the companies that these companies are cheaper because they're not as good at making the games, right? And it's never just a simple copy paste. Even though I said it is, it's not. It doesn't work like that. But if you had a solid team of people that knew what they were doing to do it, you'd come out with an okay product for sure. But they wouldn't make a quick buck then,
It's either no budget or dump the bank account. Meanwhile, Lethal Company, made by one guy. Now,
Lethal
because
Company,
studios
that's
are
good.
investing so much, they tend to interfere with the creative process to
Yes.
insane
Yes.
degrees.
This is what I've been
They see
saying all
trends
this
that are
entire
making money
time.
elsewhere, and they think, well, let's just throw that into our game. I'm funding this. What I say goes.
Yes, that's how it
Redfall
is.
lost 70% of its Arcane staff during development, struggled the whole way. Development of Redfall began in 2018 as parent ZeniMax was quietly looking to sell itself and was encouraging its studios to create games as a service projects like Overwatch. Microtransactions were intensely encouraged. However, the problems in trying to develop Redfall surfaced early. Firstly, management kept offering conflicting visions of what the game would and should be, resulting in developer
that's never
confusion
good.
about what they were creating. How to reconcile single-player and multiplayer within an Arcane game was never really resolved either. Secondly, Arcane employed fewer than 100 people, which had been enough to make a single-player game, but was not a healthy number for developing
Prey
a
was
large
pretty good.
multiplayer game with
I never Prey. Prey was a
microtransactions
pretty
to
good game.
manage. Outsourcing
But you
work
can
to
get it
other
for a couple of
studios
pounds now
was
on Steam.
reportedly not enough to alleviate the strain. As a result of plummeting morale and lack of direction, veteran employees left the company in droves, with about 70% of the staff ultimately leaving Arcane. Redfall is not the only story of its kind.
I completely forgot Redfall was a thing,
Or AAA
It was
games that severely
horrific.
disappointed, and you'll find something similar. Management interfered. Management wanted this.
Yeah,
I imagine
like I
they
said,
really have to micromanage these.
I love how we're getting towards the end of his video, and now he's mentioning management. Like I mentioned it like from the second. Like it's not even really management. Like I said, they're even higher than that, bro. It's people that don't even look at the game. All they look at is the numbers, and that's all they care about.
These things again because of the investment. Sometimes with AAA games, it feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and Gordon Ramsay
for sure.
is pissed. What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
There's got to be a happy middle ground in dev team size. Too small and you feel like the world rests on your shoulders. Too big and you feel like you have zero agency and influence. These big
smaller
dev teams,
team
especially when they're spread out against
that has a longer amount of
studios
time,
across
definitely is the
country,
perfect.
can sometimes have very inefficient communication. Bureaucracy. Next, Battlefield has the largest development team so far. 1 year later, former DICE dev says 2042 never stood much chance being great at launch. There's a video by Timothy Kane, the creator of the original Fallout,
But it's probably because it was
about
pushed
game
out
development
too early, bro.
caution. And he talks about how certain things in game development now that could be fixed in 45 minutes now take 4 weeks.
When we were making
Yeah.
the Outer Worlds, the combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list. That's it. That's all I wanted. The programmer who it got signed to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like, I've coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry.
Wow,
Lead programmer
okay.
came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard. And he goes, I'll come back. He came back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do I have any options here?
This is game dev in the current time zone in a nutshell. Man's like, can I do this? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know if you can touch that.
Fine.
I've never heard of this
2
guy though.
weeks.
I might have to
You
search
want
him
to
up.
fix these lines of code?
Timothy
That
Kane, I think it
decision
was,
has
right?
to go through 10 fucking departments now. It needs to be approved by your manager.
Yeah,
by your
that's
manager's
a clusterfuck,
manager.
bro.
It has to go through the marketing team, the DEI office. The fucking janitor's cousin has to approve it. Indie developers don't have the same level of bureaucracy. I imagine if there's a problem with the code, you could just walk over to the cubicle of Jimbo and ask him about it without the
yo,
fucking
Bob,
HR
fix this code,
department
big boy.
breathing down your neck. And you also have to make games that can be released in China. You need that China money. It has to hit certain
Winnie
quotas
the
and
Pooh,
scores
bro.
on diversity, equity, and inclusion to secure funding. And the game needs to have microtransactions for this consistent revenue source, a live service business model, so that makes the investors happy. And can you see how creativity dies in this environment when games are made by committee and not creativity? It also seems like the more employees a company has, the easier it is for you to blend in and not be seen or heard. Indie studios typically have
I think
better
that happens
working
with any company though,
conditions,
right?
flexible hours, employees have more creative control. Smaller teams allow the individual to have more influence on a game and a greater impact. I've seen a lot of articles from ex-developers who say, this game wasn't what we intended to make. It wasn't what we envisioned. Disagreements are going to spring up in game development, but it's easier to settle an argument between 2 people than it is 100. At the end of the day,
exactly.
indie gaming has risen where AAA has fallen. The decline of AAA gaming.
I don't think it's something that's new. Like, I think this sort of stuff has existed for a while, and I think this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future, right? Because the thing is, if an indie company gets really popular, really big, they end up then bringing in investors. They become a AAA company, or they get bought by a bigger company, and it's a rinse and repeat method, right? These indie companies make really good projects, then they get bought up by a bigger either company, or they get investors in and become the bigger company, and then they become the AAA company that makes the bad titles, and it's a rinse and repeat sort of cycle, right? I don't think it's ever going to go away because the industry makes too much money for it to go back to how it used to be. That's the problem. It's all the money, and that's probably not going to change.
Is due to the insane budgets, scope, and expectations of these games. How that affects the employees, the work environment, the investors and higher-ups who have to constantly micromanage these games and throw in their own ideas when they have no fucking clue what makes a good video game. I feel like a lot of these developers simply don't have the same luxuries and freedom to create art like they used to. Game development in the AAA space is now a committee process where simple solutions to bugs can take weeks, where the freedom to express and
that's
create
rough,
art
bro.
and take risks is suppressed in favor of creating the generic and the safe. Too many external factors have disrupted what used to be a creative process with the singular goal of making the best and most fun video game possible. It ain't about that no more. This shit has to make money, and a lot of it. And it's for all these reasons that AAA gaming is declining, and why indie titles are thriving. But what do you think? What are some of
Like
your
I said,
favorite
though,
indie games? Let me know your thoughts and opinions.
Like I think it's been optimistic thinking that it's going to change. I don't know. Well, I don't know if Adman think it is going to change, but I think it's been optimistic thinking that it will change because, like I said, it's just going to be like a circle where the guys with the big money will always then just pick up the indie game companies or like as owning them or absorb them or just start funding them and making them, and it's just always going to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's why some big devs nowadays, when their companies get bought out, they use that funding to make a new indie studio and they try and work their way and become like, there's certain people that will always just go and leave and make a new indie studio after them bought out, new indie studio bought out. But yeah, it is an interesting topic for sure. This kind of working conditions is something you're afraid of. You don't need to be afraid of it, bro. You'll be fine. I know you. I know you, bro. You'll be fine.